The John Lebang Show has been known to make people laugh, sing, think, scream, throw things in rage, and generally lose their minds. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back, Earthlings, to the second hour of this week's John Lebang Show. Well, the news cycle is back to its regular routine. We had some foreign problem with the missile launch. Then we had the presidential thing with Trump there and his latest debacles. Terrorist attack, and now we're on to protests again. What they're calling protest, or the mainstream media claims is a protest. They don't look like protests to me. They look like riots. They are promoting violence. Of course they are. Of course they're going to say they're there to protest a cop who gets acquitted for what they're saying is murdering a person. They like to slip in the melanin factor equation into the mix, but I think that's at least from my point of view, is the least of the concerns, because I think melanin in most cases is not an issue when it comes to these police shooting of individuals. You can disagree with me, but in these locations where we get a lot of these police shootings where they kill somebody, the crime rate is usually on the higher side. And these people who are being shot are normally doing something they're not supposed to be doing. And if they were just being law-abiding citizens, chances are they wouldn't get shot. For the most part. I mean, occasionally we get that thing with the nurse and the cop, which is ridiculous. But the protests for that where were they? There weren't hundreds of people protesting a lady or protesting for a lady because she was arrested for, I don't know, no apparent reason. Because the cop didn't like her answer. Because you got to do what the cops say. And a lot of times you better do what the cops say, agree with it or not. And in St. Louis, they were told it was an unlawful protest, which it, from all accounts, looks like it was an unlawful protest, which usually that means if it's unlawful, that it's no longer a protest and it's become a mob, or it's become something other than that. But, you know, when you're talking to people who are a certain political belief, everything is run through the melanin. Cops are all bad. Even though cops don't make a lot of money, go look at what you make a year as a police officer, and then add that into the equation that in a lot of these cities that these shootings are happening, the police officers in those cities are already under a tremendous strain because the budget isn't there to give them either enough pay or to bring in extra bodies in there to, deal with the uptick in crime, the higher crime rates. Be nice if, people wouldn't commit crimes, then we wouldn't need as many police, then we wouldn't have these police shootings. And we wouldn't have these protests because of the police shootings. But the crime rates are there. People are committing crimes. People are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. Like it or not, some laws are ridiculous. But you don't go looking for trouble with the police department. You don't do things that have a chance of either harming somebody else or stealing from somebody else. It's like these people who are protesting. God, I hate that word when it's related to these little movements in these cities, because they break people's property. They burn people's things. They bust windows. They even hurt the police officers. The cops are just there to protect one group of people from another group of people. Protect us individuals from the mob. Because the mob doesn't rule. And in America, when you talk about the First Amendment, and that's what a lot of people are out there saying, this is our First Amendment right to protest. The First Amendment, if you didn't know, because most people don't even know 4 of the 10 amendments and don't even know them well enough into what they understand. The First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Means the government can't make a religion, not unlike England, who have the Church of England there. Our government can't do that. Or prohibit the free exercise thereof. In other words, whatever religion you want to be, even if it's a Luciferian, you're allowed to do it. As long as it's not taking away from other people's rights. So that means if your cult of some sort needs human sacrifices, you just can't do that. You can't kill somebody because your religion dictates that. No matter how many times you scream, Allah Akbar. Or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for the redress of grievance. Peaceably address the regresses. Not throw rocks, not hurt cops, not burn buildings, not destroy property. You are no longer exercising your First Amendment rights when you do those things. You are committing a crime against a fellow American, another human being, whatever. So when you guys are out there protesting away, acting a fool, and you start destroying things, and you even tie up businesses. See, that's the rub here. Your protest cannot affect anybody else's life, cannot infringe on other people's freedom. So if somebody has a business, you might be able to stand outside and protest, but you have to let people who want to shop there go into the shop. That's right. That's called peacefully protesting. And in fact, protesting, according to the First Amendment, is really something about governments. In other words, if you have a problem with something in the government. Because when you do go to somebody's home or place of business and you protest, whether you like them or not, you're infringing on their rights. Because you might be affecting their business, which is in turn affecting their livelihood and their lives. So you may want to protest somebody, but you really don't have that right according to the First Amendment. The First Amendment is to peacefully state your problems with the government. When the government is overreaching in some manner. So we have a protest on a trial case now. And we've been having these for a long time. These protests of police versus, for the most part, in the great majority, criminals who, if they weren't doing what they were doing, they would have never been shot. Remember Michael Brown? That guy tries to jump in the police car and take the cop and take his gun. And they're protesting about that. Oh yeah, might as well protest that. Even though if he doesn't do any of that, if he's not out committing a crime earlier in the day, he'd still be alive today, or at least not shot by the cop, because we never know when we're going to go. So this is what we're dealing with here in the United States in this segment of the news cycle. Because once this gets a little too much for the viewer, the American, they'll switch the topic. This way they keep it fresh, the mainstream media. How these guys control everything, I don't know. It still baffles me that people even watch most of these news networks that don't really report the news, or at least don't report it objectively. And when they call these people out here protesters, and they were peacefully protesting until they started being violent. I mean, if you read some of these articles online, yes, these news media outlets are like, peaceful protesters, blah, 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 and then it became violent. They were never peaceful protesters. There was going to be violence. It just was a matter of when it began. It's all part of the greater structure of what I've talked about for years on the show. And it's all about the New World Order, ladies and gentlemen. We'll probably get into more on that in the second segment, because we're running pretty close to the time. We got about, less than a minute here before we got to take our first break. But if we're going to continue to be slammed with this kind of news coverage, where it's protest and terrorist attack and this with North Korea, we're all going to get used to it. It's going to become the norm. And we can see signs that it's already becoming, I don't want to say accepted, but people are not as shocked about these things as they were before. And they're getting you accustomed to it. Because as I said in the first hour, a lot of this stuff can be stopped if they really wanted to, with the amount of surveillance that, the whole world is under surveillance. Cell phones are you can't go anywhere, or your phone can't